Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are doing another ink smushing video. Um, this card and the color palette was inspired by Amy R. over at Prairie Paper and Ink. I can't remember if she was hosting the Color Throwdown Challenge or if she was just participating in it, but these were the colors. And I think this was back in like 2023. And she did something very similar to this. And so this is where I got my inspiration. So I apologize. I do not know what die set this is from, but she has she has an entire playlist where she talks about all of the different ways she's used I think they're Simon Says stamp mushrooms. So what I've done here is I have taken this die and I've cut it out twice from Canson XL watercolor paper, and I'm going to be using my Distress Oxide inks today to do our ink smushing. Before, in the previous video, I used Concord and Ninth inks, but this time I wanted to kind of have that more creamy, chalky look, and so I wanted to use my oxides today. I have Rusty Hinge, Ground Espresso, and then Faded Jeans. So for the mushroom caps, I'm going to be using the Faded Jeans. For the underside, I think they're called gills, if I'm not mistaken, of the mushroom, I'm going to be using the Ground Espresso just because that would cast more of a shadow. And then for the stem, you could use the Ground Espresso again, but I wanted to incorporate another color, so I'm going to be using the Rusty Hinge for the stems. All I'm doing on my glass surface is smashing down some of the Faded Jeans ink. I'm spraying it with just a little bit of water, a couple spritzes from a fine mister, and then I'm going to dunk the die cuts inside of that. This is watercolor paper, so I'm not concerned about adding too much water. I'm not concerned about, the paper pilling or anything like that. I'm just trying to get, particularly with this first layer, a good coverage. On these mushroom caps, there are some pieces that will pop out, and I will take care of those later. I kept them in there for now. I wasn't sure if I wanted to take them out. I did decide that I did later on, but for now, I kept them in. And as you can see, I'm just dunking these in, kind of moving them around, just trying to get a good first layer of ink on there. Sometimes I take my finger if I feel like there's too much ink in one spot and not enough in another. Sometimes I'll take my finger and just kind of help move that pigment around. I cleaned off my work surface, just used a paper towel to wipe that off, and I've moved on to the Ground Espresso. This is the gills or the underside of the mushrooms. And I'm doing the same thing, just taking that, making sure I've got a good bit of coverage. What's nice is that these dies, the part that actually shows has some debossed lines on there. So I'm making sure that I get ink on those lines in particular, as the other parts of it just won't show. Now I've moved on to the stems, same concept. Here, because these were so thin, I did end up using my fingers for the majority of it. There are little thin, teeny tiny stems or stalks. Are they called a stalk on a mushroom? I don't know. I think they're called a stem. I did not use those ones. I kind of liked the chunky squatter versions. And this one in particular, I did discover that I had to use my fingers quite a bit to get ink on there. I am going to go back and dry these all off and apply ink again, particularly to the mushroom tops and the underside or the gills. These were not completely dry, but they were dry enough that I knew it would layer. So wet on wet will blend, meaning that the colors are just going to kind of melt together. But if you dry in between layers, then they're going to, or dry in between applications of ink, then they're going to layer on top of one another, and you're going to get a lot more texture, a lot more interest. If you want a smoother transition or a smoother finish, then make sure your pigment is still wet when you go to apply another coat. But I wanted lots of texture on these, and so these were mostly dry when I went about this step, that they were going to give me a lot of texture, but they weren't completely dry. I will repeat this for the mushroom bottoms or the gills, And then we're going to do something a little different with the stems. With the stems, instead of applying more ink, I kind of wanted to bleach out, so to speak, some of that color. So I'm taking my fine mister, and if I had a distress sprayer, I would use that. But I'm going to take that and apply just a couple squirts of water, let that sit for just a few seconds, and then I'm taking this paper towel and blotting it up. This is going to essentially bleach out or lighten some of the areas on this. I didn't like the amount of texture I was getting, so I'm taking a note out of Christina Werner's book, and I'm spraying some of that water into my hand, and I'm going to sprinkle that on there, and once again just let that sit for a little bit, and then take that same paper towel and blot that up. That gave me a little bit more texture than what I was getting as I was trying to use my fine mister. That was just the wrong application for that fine mister, for what I was trying to accomplish. So using my fingers and just kind of dripping the water on, that was a much better way to go about with what I was trying to accomplish. Here I have some color plan. This is called Baghdad Brown cardstock. This is 110 pound, and I used a stitched tag die from my stash. I apologize, I don't know where this is from, but any tag die you have will work. Just kind of check your proportions for the card size you're trying to make. I have a geometric stencil here. Again, I'm not entirely sure what this is called, but any stencil you have in your stash will work. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to do kind of more of a tone on tone or if I wanted to go with like a white. So I did both. You can tell me in the comments below which one you prefer. I think I prefer the craft better. I think it plays off of the color palette a little better, but the white is not bad. I did toy with the idea of just maybe doing a little bit of stenciling kind of in like a corner and having it cascade out to nothing. But I decided that I would take this ground espresso, which is what we use to do the gills of the mushrooms, and I'm just going to messily apply this. I'm using my magnets and my magnetic board to help me kind of hold that stencil in place. It does shift a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to go for like super pristine, precise stenciling here. I'm just trying to get some interest in the background without making it compete with the other elements of the card. So here I'm lifting up the stencil, just trying to check and see what I like. See that there's dark spots. There's some that there's really no color at all. I like that. That was kind of what I was going for. I'm going to repeat that with the white. I'm not going to apply any more ink. I'm going to use the ink that's on the brush and on the stencil and just use what I've got. Again, I didn't want this to be super clean and precise. I wanted it to have a lot of interest and variation. To bump up texture and interest some more, I decided to do some ink splatter. Here I'm using a water brush pen. This did not work. It did not work for me anyway. But what I've done is I have smashed the rusty hinge ink pad onto my work surface. You can see I'm trying like tons of ways to get this ink to flow, and it just didn't flow. So I ended up switching to a actual water brush that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. This brush works for splatters, but I do not like it for actually painting. I'm going to purchase some actual really nice quality water brushes from Altenew in the future. But for now, these watercolor brushes from Hobby Lobby will work just fine. Here I was able to get a little bit more splatter, and I did that both on the backgrounds and on these tags. I'm not adding a lot of water. These are not watercolor paper, so I want to be mindful of how much water I'm adding. I just wanted a little more texture and interest. Off screen, I did pop out all of the little circles in the mushroom caps, and now I'm going to go ahead and start layering these all together. You can do the tall, skinny stems. You can do the squattier, chunkier ones. I think I like those better. And all I do is add a little bit of glue to the mushroom gills, and I sandwich the stem between the mushroom cap and the mushroom gills. You could put those behind if you wanted to, behind the mushroom cap and gills, but I liked the look of them being kind of sandwiched between. I thought that was kind of cute and playful, and besides, that's how, if you were to look at a stem, or excuse me, a mushroom in nature, that's how they would look from the side. You're not going to see it like behind it, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to repeat this, Same process for all of them. Apply glue to the mushroom gills, to the ground espresso layer, put my stem, and then put my cap on top. When those were all assembled, I did take these backgrounds once they were dry to my paper trimmer, and I'm just going to trim off about 1/4 of an inch from each side, just so that when I apply these to a cream card base, there's just a little bit of that cream card base showing, and it kind of helps draw the eye into our focal images. I did glue each of those background panels down flat to the card base, and now I'm going to kind of work on my layout. I knew I wanted about 3 mushrooms down at the bottom of these tags, and I'm just kind of playing with my arrangement and how I wanted them to look. I did decide that I wanted that middle mushroom to be popped up a little bit, and so I'm going to apply some foam tape behind that middle one. These are just Dollar Tree foam squares, and I'm just using some nonstick scissors to cut them in half, and then applying that foam tape to the back side of the middle mushroom, and then I will glue those to the other 2 mushrooms down flat to the little tag shape here. I did want these tags themselves to be popped up off the card, so I'm using some Altenew Instant Dimension foam tape for that purpose. This is just going to give me a little bit of lift off of these, off of the card panels, and just add a little bit more dimension and interest. Now what I'm going to do is I took some Paper Studio Baker's Twine. It's kind of like a cream color. I doubled it up and I made it into a bow. Then I took a dollop of just glue and applied that to the kind of tag opening, the circle part of the tag, and used some reverse tweezers to kind of help hold that in place. And I did that to both of the cards, and that just kind of helps finish off that tag so it actually looks like a tag and not just like you forgot what you were doing. So I do not have coordinating dies for this stamp set, and I'm not entirely sure that the sentiments have coordinating dies. But regardless, what I'm going to do here, fussy cutting is not my jam. I'm not very good at it, and I don't enjoy it. But I like the look, the finished look of a, die cut sentiment where it kind of curves and contorts and moves with the actual letters. But when I try to free range cut that, I don't do a very good job. And so one of the things that I have started to do that has helped me, doesn't make it perfect, but it has helped me a lot, is to actually take a pencil and draw an outline around it. You can actually take that drawn outline and take it to a brother scan and cut and have your brother scan and cut it for you. That is an option. But I wanted to show that you can also fussy cut it with just a nice pair of sharp scissors. So what I'm doing here is I'm following that outline. I'm holding the cardstock in my non-dominant hand and holding my scissors in my dominant hand. And I'm trying to keep my scissors as straight as possible and trying to move the cardstock with my non-dominant hand more than I move the scissors. That gives you a cleaner, nicer cut, and it will give you a little bit more crisp results. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. And this is real time. I am like really slow when it comes to this. But I'm going to do that for both of these sentiments. To glue these down, I'm going to add a small foam square, again, a Dollar Tree foam square to the right-hand side, just because we have popped up the tag with a little bit of foam tape. So in order to keep things kind of on the same level so there's no sagging and bending, I do need to add liquid glue to the left-hand side and then some foam squares to the right-hand side, and that will keep everything flush. I did feel like these cards needed just a little bit of sparkle and something to kind of fill some of this blank space on this tag right here. So I went to my stash, and from Blingy Thingy on Etsy, I found these little pearls that kind of resembled a cross between the ground espresso and that rusty hinge. I thought they played on the color combination very well. And I'm just putting a little dollop of glue with a little jewel picker, and that will finish these cards. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I really appreciate you. I hope you felt inspired, and until then, we will see you next time. Bye.